Hi,
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. And you?
I'm good. And by the way, Lauren, this is much
Yeah.
better recording wise. It sounds great.
Oh, is it? Okay, great. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for doing that with me.
No problem. No problem. Chris, you're having a buzzing noise. God forbid, right?
There's no buzzing noise. That's just the
Yeah.
noise inside my brain.
Well, great then. I'm so excited to chat with you. I absolutely love Women Talking. I think it's my number one film of the year, to be honest. Um,
Oh,
and
wow.
I've
Thank
been
you.
talking with everybody about like everybody. I'm telling my mother to watch it, like, just anybody that I talk to, I'm like, please see this movie. So yeah, I'm really thrilled to be speaking with you. Um, and I know that you worked with Sarah Polly before. So one of my first questions was, what was it like working with her again? And has her film style changed at all? Have you noticed? Has it evolved?
Working with Sarah again was really incredible. Take This Waltz was really one of my favorite professional experiences ever. Um, Beyond what you're doing creatively, also how you're doing it creatively. Sarah is just an extraordinary collaborator who wants what you bring to it. She is not invested in any way, shape, or form in the idea of some genius filmmaker who tells everybody what to do and moves things an inch here and there on set. Like, she is so expansive in her creativity. So working in that environment is just so incredible because you know that you're sort of the best you can do, the best you hope you can do is what she's hoping for. She's hoping for your vision to inform her vision. So, in terms of how Sarah makes films or an aesthetic or anything like that, if anything, the 10 years between projects only sort of refined and matured certain cinematic ideas she had. But as a collaborator and as an artist, it was very much picking up from where we left off.
Wow, that's great. You also worked on The Handmaid's Tale, which I was thinking about how there have to be some sort of parallels between these two projects. And did you notice any?
Yeah, certainly. I would say that um, the sort of foregrounding of a woman's experience obviously is central to both. Um, the sort of navigating trauma and highly patriarchal and restrictive systems are obviously very similar. So there's a lot of thematic and tonal similarities. Handmaid's Tale also has a sense of humor and the way that Women Talking does. Um, and I think again, probably the thing that they have most in common as a creative process is just a hugely collaborative, respectful, and supportive creative environment. Bruce Miller and Lizzie and all the team at Handmaids create an environment where your contribution and your role as a artist or a craftsperson is respected and appreciated. And I certainly kind of believe over the years that that kind of environment is where people do their best work.
That's great. Like I said, I was so impressed with Women Talking, and I was on the edge of my seat. And it's such a talky movie, which is like weird to describe to people. And I was thinking about like there's so many dialogue heavy scenes, and how, as an editor, like what did you do to preserve the dialogue when editing? Did you have any specific goals in mind?
I would say the goals we had in editing the dialogue and women talking were really just to maintain something that was integral to Sarah, which was a kind of circular dialogue that sort of where emotional and thematic ideas could be raised over and over again, but from different perspectives through different people's eyes, which is slightly anti most film editing, like you're always trying to be one step ahead of the audience and never repeating anything. Editing is in a lot of ways creating the straightest line you possibly can from A to B. But with Women Talking, it was essential to Sarah that it not be a straight line, it be a circle, and a circle you keep coming back to. So myself and the other editor, Rosalind Kalu, the goal was from the very beginning to find a way to take these performances and this writing and all this dialogue and have it come at you in continually different ways, but enriching the ideas and the themes all the way through. And so, certainly there was a lot of distillation. There was a lot of, okay, now we don't need this line that we've sort of heard before, because now we can do it in a look. Or these 5 lines can now be a look because we've established the emotional territory here. So Sarah's scripts are not meant to be sort of, this is, the script is the script is the movie. It's really an exploration of ideas and then distilling it down to its purest form emotionally over the course of the edit.
Wow, that's fascinating. I read in a Vanity Fair piece that there was some debate about changing the narrator from August to Kate, and you were mentioned in it. So I was wondering, at what point in the edit did you realize there needed to be more of a female voice?
That was fairly deep into the edit. The novel obviously had used the narrator of August as the main, as the voice of the book. It was the minutes of the meeting were in fact the novel. Sarah, transposed that into the film, and for a long time, that was how the movie worked. And Ben Wishaw's character of August was the narrator. It was extraordinarily beautiful narration. It was so moving. I still hear some of the lines and go, oh my God, that's so beautiful how he said that. But gradually became clear that that wasn't the voice of the movie. It was the voice of the novel and it was the voice of the screenplay, but the voice of the film had to be something different. So so when we started to realize that we needed to find a different voice, it was fairly deep into the process. And once, though, we made that choice, and once the realization that it still needs to be a bit of an outsider, it can't necessarily be Ona or Salome or one of our main figures. It still needed to come from outside the main group. But that the voice we were most sort of interested in pursuing was Ouch's voice. It gave us an elasticity to the storytelling that completely opened up the movie to itself. All of a sudden, we could use footage from everywhere to illustrate her ideas, because her ideas, though the voiceover that Sarah found was essentially from the future, sort of looking back on the story that happened, it gave an immediacy to the voiceover that we could use material more thematically, more emotionally. And it also freed up a certain amount of material, because the first 15 minutes of the film were August setting up getting into the loft, and so all of a sudden that was not our movie anymore. So we were taking footage from all over, from scenes that were now deleted, from the ending of the film, all that sort of stuff, and turning them into the actual into the film itself, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Wow, that's wild. That's fascinating. There's a little moment that I was thinking about where they're arguing about being like animals. I think it's towards the beginning, and it briefly flashes to like Salome's point of view when she runs towards the men like an animal. And I thought, I wonder if this was like a heavily debated little moment to put in there, because it kind of goes into, you're not sure if it goes into her point of view or or maybe it is to Alch's point of view. But yeah, I was wondering if you could speak to that, like kind of decisions like that to add in little moments like that.
Sure. The way the flashbacks were used in the film gradually evolved from very scripted scenes that came upon that were in the script at a very specific point, to expressionistic images we could cut to when they were emotionally appropriate. So, for example, the opening of the film, where Ona's lying in bed and wakes up and realizes what's happened to her, that actually came from much deeper in the film. When her and Marike were speaking about, but won't you hate that child? There still remains a single flash there. But in the script, we went to that scene there, and the flashbacks were more like scenes within the dialogue. over the process of the edit, we started using those scenes more instinctually and emotionally. So, for example, when Salome attacks the men in the shed, where that is in the Flash in the current film is where it was scripted as a scene. But we actually used the scene part of it earlier in the film to help set up the actual events that happened in the colony. So then when we came to the moment where it was scripted, we wanted to sort of heighten Salome's subjectivity, but we'd already done the scene. And also, we didn't want to lose the momentum within the scene in the loft. So that was a part of how these flashback scenes became more impressionistic. They became flashback shots, and they became emotionally additive rather than expositional in those moments.
Wow, yeah, that's a really great little moment too that really works really well, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. In the middle of the film, a census taker comes in and kind of breaks up the mood a little bit. How important was putting that together, and how much like attention to attention was put into that? I would imagine that that kind of is a really crucial like scene.
Absolutely. The census taker scene is where we first sort of really fully articulate to the audience, this isn't a period piece.
Right.
This isn't happening in another world. This is happening now, or in the instance of the film 2010. Um, so earlier in the film, there are details. There's like a triangle on people's buggies. There's coffee makers in shots, but you're not conscious of it because the overriding information your brain is getting is this is a period film. So that section was also a part of the novel, and Miriam Toews had written it that the driver was driving along with California Dreamin' by the Mamas and the Papas playing. Um, we decided to experiment a little bit with different bits of music, and literally we said, well, instinctually, I said, well, let's try Daydream Believer. And then we didn't try anything else. It was literally just, oh, and now that's the okay.
That's
There's a
funny.
million songs, and we said we were going to try at least 50, but the first one we tried is actually the one we want it to be. Um, so once that music was overlaid to the sequence, which we already have, which was really sort of a lot of the details of the women's lives day to day, which was really essential to show for Sarah to sort of feed the stuff in the loft. You could have made it just purely a conversation amongst the women in the loft, but that little sequence, beyond being slightly surreal and telling you where we are, 2010, it also is a very clear snapshot of their daily life. Agata's
Yeah.
feeding the chickens, Marike's feeding her family, Salome is giving her daughter the antibiotics. Um, so it's this incredible sequence that that was full of all these details that Sarah wanted to represent their day-to-day life.
Wow, that's great. This has been such a great conversation. I just have one last question.
Sure.
Kind of going back to the flashbacks, you spend like just a moment on almost every woman's assault. Like with Greta, it's her teeth, and Ona, it's her legs. And I was wondering, like, do certain body parts anchor these moments? And was that kind of like something you um, were focusing on in your edit?
That's a really interesting question. Um, I would say that with the post sort of trauma, the sort of post attack flashes, it was absolutely integral to Sarah that we not show the violence. She wasn't
Yeah.
interested in showing the violence. We've all seen the violence enough. That's not the story she wanted to tell. So um, the incidents of trauma that are related, we never spoke specifically in terms of the different body parts. Um, Obviously, they're all different forms of attack and abuse, um, and so I'm sure Sarah was very intent on sort of showing how that manifested to all the women. Sorry, in those to the women in whose flashbacks we show.
Mhm.
They are all different, and this is what's amazing to talking to you about this is that I'd never articulated that in my brain. I knew they were
Wow.
different, but I'd never actually gone, oh wow, yeah, they're all very
Yeah,
different,
they are.
you know,
Yeah.
which is what's so great to talk to people about anything you do, because I think there's a myth that excuse me, I think there's a myth that people think that we know, when you're working on something, every person, you're like, oh, I know every single thing. And a lot of the details, but the way they all come together for you is not necessarily how they come together for other people.
Yeah.
So that's what's great to hear your point like that, because now I'm thinking about those scenes in a way I never have. That's great.
Wow, that's wonderful. Oh, great. I'm glad that I could help in some way. Well, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation. Like I said before, women talking is, I haven't been able, I'm a woman who hasn't been able to stop talking about it. So, and it's one that's just kind of stuck in it's, there's some films you watch that you like and they go away in your head, but this is one that, like, when I rewatched, I'm like, yeah, I remember like
Mm.
everything about it. It's kind of interesting like that. So it sticks with you. Yeah.
That's so wonderful to hear, and certainly it was the experience of all of us who worked on it, that it was uh, a tremendously important and fulfilling experience. So to hear you say that, it really means a lot. Thank you
Oh,
so
great.
much.
Yeah.